Part 16 of Celebrian. Oh my god, I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. I'm almost there. We're almost there, people. We can make it. We can make it. Okay. Sexual content not for children under 18. Let's get started. Let's get this over with. The king had revealed a chicken that was more magnificent than any save the great war horses. It was 2 feet long, 4 inches wide at the base, tapering to 3 inches at the great head. The head itself was a great, irregular ball, 4 inches across, shiny, put, mottled pink and black. The shaft was rigid with large pulsing veins and pebbled with many warts and moles, in some places forming continuous mats. Slowly, Celebrian walked forward to the king, working her hips to send jiggles through her breast and ass. At the king, she let her gown fall from her so that she was dressed only in her boots. She ran a hand along each breast and worked her nipples as hard as they ever been, just short of a sheen like the Orc King's glands. With one hand on a teat, she worked the other into her twat, teasing her lips apart and down before ramming her fist into herself. She worked herself a few minutes, not paying much attention to her own body, but more intent on the king. She watched his eyes on her, working her teat when his gaze turned to her breast, working her twat when his gaze fell lower. Without a word or a touch, she had brought an ache to the king's balls and his cock to rock hardness. Still standing, she reached for the king's chicken with both hands. She gasped in pleasure at the feel of the rough, pulsing shaft in her hands. Her small hands could barely span the shaft. She moved her hands to the bulb and cupped it like a precious object. She reached down with her tongue to flick the tip. The motion caused her breast to swing forward like battering rams so that she fell against his cock. The king grunted in displeasure. Hurrying on, she licked the tip of his cock, tasting the clear, salty liquid that had already come to gather there. Keeping one hand near the head, she ran the other hand down the shaft to the root. Following downwards, she found the scrotum, and hanging very far down were 2 huge gonads. She gave a moan of pleasure, as her hand explored the heft and size of the great stones. They were bigger by far than the last king. Her body quivered in anticipation of the gift they would bring forth. Cradling a ball in one hand, she began to work the king's cock in her mouth. She had to force her jaws open to the point of sharp pain, but she ignored it. She had to please the king. She took the head of the king's shaft in and out of her mouth. She could not keep her teeth from almost biting the king, so big was his cock. She tried to ease the member as much as she could with her lips and tongue. Abandoning the struggle with the bulb, she took the cock deeper into her throat. She felt only a brief gag as she drove the cock far into her, burying the huge member within her. She dimly heard a collective gasp of appreciation from the crowd at her feet. She kept the king within her until she could hold her breath no longer, then rose for a gasp through her nostrils before diving on him again, leaving the cock in her mouth. Her jaw sent stabs of pain through her head, and her king's great cock threatened to choke her. She would have liked to take longer, but she did not think she could manage it yet. She increased the pace of her dives on his cock and worked his ball smoothly. In a moment she felt his ball quiver. With a jerk she pulled from him so that he could come in her gaping mouth, and come he did in a great wash. His piss-hole was huge, big enough for her to put her little finger into it. The flood of goo that came from it was like nothing she had experienced before. In 2 great spurts her mouth was full to choking, and a pint was splashed on her face and running down her breasts. The king spurted 3 more times, leaving her with another pint sprayed on her. She only managed a few quick swallows before the king was through. "Not bad," he said a little shakily. "The teeth will have to go, but not bad." The king stood from his throne and gestured for her to bend over. She could tell he was somewhat spent himself and seemed to be about to fuck her more for the principle than for the lust. She didn't care. She could tell she had won him. But what did he mean about her teeth? The king quickly fucked her twice, once in the pussy, once in the ass. It was somewhat perfunctory, but she felt filled none the less. Although she did not come, she did provide plenty of moans and grunts for the king's benefit. Ithguk returned heavily to his throne. Cum seemed to drip continuously from her face and body. After a few moments of rest, he spoke to her. "Celebrian, I offer you a seat at my side. Will you be my queen?" Yes, my king. Before you accept, know that you must pleasure all the males of my honor guard, said the king. Celebrian could tell by the looks of pleasure the orcs behind the king and the looks of jealousy on the rest of the crowd that he meant the 12 orc warriors standing behind the throne. I agree, my king. Very well, said the king with satisfaction. Bring the lesser throne and place it on my right, and bring the queen's jewel box. Attendants grabbed a smaller wooden throne to the side of the king and brought up a fair-sized coffer. The king reached into the coffer and fished around for a few items. Come here, Celebrian. When she approached, he placed a necklace around her head. He pierced her earlobes each with an earring. He then placed a crown on her head. Finally, he gave her a hand mirror to admire her jewels. The crown was a ring of panels. Each panel depicted a 6-act. One showed a woman taking an orc cock in her mouth. Another showed the woman servicing a horse. A third showed the woman being fucked in the ass. The crown was of fine gold, the relics well depicted, and accented with small I can't even read that word. Cabacons? I don't know, it might be a misspelling. She liked the way the crown sat on her semen-drenched face. Next she turned to the earrings. These each dangled a 2-inch cock carved in alabaster from gold studs. The cocks had knotted shafts and bulb heads like the king's cocks. She shook her head to make the cocks dance and smiled at the effect. Lastly, she examined the necklace. It was of another cock, this one carved in ebony, but much larger than the earrings. It was a full 1 foot long and 3 inches wide at the head. It hung on a plain silver chain. The base of the cock was plainly visible at the dip in her throat, but the head was lost in the depths of her cleavage. She squeezed the necklace cock between her breasts and turned to the king. Magnificent, my king! Celebrian, your cock whore is most grateful for your gifts. There are more to come, Celebrian, said the king. Bring the whore's apple, he said to his attendants. They returned with a piece of wood, cut and painted to look something like an apple. It was about the size of the king's cockhead. It looked like it had been gouged and repainted many times. There was an iron loop set in its base. Bite into this, the king said, as he handed it to her. She dutifully bit into the wood. No, dear God, no. Oh dear. She expected to find it hard and unyielding, but her teeth sank easily into it. Oh, my God. It was big enough that she was now stuck with this wooden apple in her mouth. Before she could wonder how she was going to extricate it, the king put a clawed finger through the loop and pulled it free. Oh my God. With a searing pain, the apple came free with all her teeth still stuck in it. Wow. Ouch. Blood rained from her mouth and mixed with the semen on her chin and breasts. Celebrian staggered with the pain and almost blacked out. She was barely aware of the king giving orders when someone poured a cool draught down her throat. At once the pain vanished, and with her tongue she could feel that her gums were healed. For the first time since coming to the king's lair, she now felt despair. What would she look like with no teeth? She had seen the human crones gumming their jaws. She shuddered. Fear not, little elf bitch, said the king. In time we will give you new teeth, after you have become used to your new mouth, and after your gums have become properly fleshy. She nodded dumbly. That's enough for one day. Tomorrow you will serve as my guard. Manet led her to an underground cell furnished with acceptable straw bed and a place to clean. He also left her with a piece of black root. Chew it continuously, he told her. It will soften your gums so you can please the king. She fell asleep chewing the root and running her fingers through her ruined mouth. In the middle of the night she awoke and used the dildo on her necklace to bring herself to climax for the first time in many days. She fell asleep again, working the nipple of one of her breasts. In the morning, Manet took her back to the great hall. A ragged cushion was thrown at her feet. She was still half naked, except for her boots, from the day before, although she had been able to clean. And we're going to stop there, with that horrendous scene still running through my mind. My God, that's not even right.